Distant stars flickered in the vastness of space as a weak distress signal pulsed through the dark. It was faint, almost barely audible. A call for help, but from where? The aliens who received the signal were from a powerful empire used to conquering weak species across the galaxy. They were used to hearing desperate cries for mercy from planets too fragile to defend themselves. This one, however, was different. It was just another weak planet, surely, they thought. Another species begging for help, another species doomed to be forgotten. The captain of the alien fleet chuckled as the distress call crackled through the communication system. He leaned back in his chair, his sharp features glinting in the dim light of the bridge. Another one of those fragile species. Let's take a look, he said, his voice full of amusement. The aliens had long since learned to ignore such signals. They had seen countless species, full of hope and desperation, only to be crushed under the weight of the galaxy's unyielding laws. But this signal was different. It was weak, too weak to be ignored. Something about it piqued their curiosity. "Prepare the fleet for a quick detour," the captain ordered, his eyes narrowing as he turned his attention back to the screen. His crew was already moving, their hands flying over buttons and switches as they prepared for the change in course. As the fleet turned, heading toward the source of the signal, the captain couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The signal came from a planet on the far edge of the galaxy, a place known for its brutal environment. The planet had been catalogued long ago, but it was a world few dared to study. Its harsh atmosphere, constant storms, and violent terrain made it an unsuitable home for most life forms. No one had bothered to look at it in centuries. But this weak signal, it was coming from that planet. The fleet moved silently through space, the stars stretching ahead like pinpricks of light in the darkness. The further they traveled, the more intrigued the captain became. The signal was unmistakable now. It wasn't a simple cry for help. No, there was something different about it. It was intentional. There was purpose behind it. The signal flickered again, this time stronger, as though it was trying to reach them with everything it had left. The alien fleet accelerated, closing the distance between themselves and the mysterious planet. As they entered the system, the captain's mind raced. A weak species trying to survive on a death world. Was that what they had been reduced to? They arrived, and the planet loomed in front of them. It was desolate. Winds howled across the barren surface, kicking up clouds of dust and debris. The storm clouds above churned like a living thing, flashing with electric fury. This was the world they were looking for, the world that had sent out the signal. The captain ordered a scan of the planet. The results were as expected, harsh, inhospitable conditions. The atmosphere was full of poisonous gases, and the terrain was a hostile mess of jagged mountains, deserts, and forests filled with predators. The planet was alive with dangers at every turn, yet someone here was sending a signal. Who would dare to call for help from such a place? Prepare the landing party, the captain barked, his voice now serious. His curiosity was piqued, but something deep inside told him this would be more than just another easy conquest. The signal was a trap, a riddle waiting to be solved. The aliens couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a carefully planned scenario. The landing party descended toward the surface, their ship slicing through the thick clouds. As they neared the planet's surface, the captain couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. It was an instinct he didn't normally trust, but in this moment it seemed to be growing stronger. The ship landed with a soft thud, the hatch opening to reveal the barren, storm-swept world. The crew stepped out, weapons in hand, ready for anything. The landscape was alien in every sense, harsh, unforgiving, and wild. The winds tore at their suits as they ventured further into the heart of the planet. Nothing seemed alive here, yet there was an undeniable energy in the air. Their first stop was a small, isolated settlement where the signal had originated. The structures were crude, made from the very materials of the planet itself. There was no sign of civilization here, just a few hastily constructed shelters covered in thick dust. And then they found it, the source of the signal. As the crew examined the device, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was a human, not a creature the aliens had expected to find. Humans were weak, fragile creatures by their standards, barely able to survive on their own planet, let alone one as deadly as this. But this human was different. His eyes were cold, calculating, as if he had seen things no one should ever have to witness. His body was battered and scarred, his face marked by countless battles with the planet's creatures. Yet he stood tall, unbowed, and his voice, when he spoke, carried a quiet power. "I sent the signal," he said, his tone calm, as though he had been expecting them. The aliens stared at him, confused and intrigued. This was not what they had anticipated. A single human, standing against the vastness of their empire. "Why?" the captain asked, his voice low. The human's gaze hardened. "Because we've been waiting for you. Earth breeds predators, not prey." The words echoed through the cold, barren winds of the planet, sending a chill down the spines of the aliens. They had thought they were dealing with a weak species, but now they were beginning to understand. Something far more dangerous than they could have imagined had just awakened on this desolate world. The SOS wasn't a cry for help. It was a challenge, a call to arms. The human was waiting for them, and the fleet was about to face something far worse than they could have ever predicted. The alien fleet descended upon Earth, their ships cutting through the atmosphere with ease, their sensors scanning the planet below. They had been expecting a primitive, fragile world, just another stop in their conquest of weak species. They were prepared to subdue this planet quickly, as they had done with countless others. But as their ships pierced the clouds, their view of Earth began to change. The planet below wasn't the desolate, helpless world they had imagined. It was alive in ways that made their advanced technology seem small and insignificant. The vast oceans shimmered like giant mirrors, reflecting the sunlight. The land was green, alive with dense forests, vast plains and towering mountains. And the creatures, they were unlike anything the aliens had encountered before. The first thing they noticed were the predators, giant creatures that roamed the forests, their claws like blades, their teeth sharp enough to rip through metal. Some were massive, towering over the trees, while others moved with an eerie grace, silent in the shadows. The aliens, accustomed to viewing themselves as the apex predators, were suddenly facing a world full of beasts that seemed to challenge their understanding of survival. As their ships glided over the surface, the aliens observed Earth's wildlife, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. Predators were everywhere, not just in the wilds, but in the oceans and skies as well. There were birds of prey with razor-sharp talons, hunting with precision and speed. Underwater, creatures swam through the depths, hunting in the blackened waters with an efficiency that could only come from millions of years of evolution. The aliens studied Earth's creatures with growing curiosity and confusion. These life forms weren't just survivors. They were ruthless, unforgiving, and built to thrive in the harshest of conditions. This wasn't the planet they had expected. This wasn't a place to be conquered. It was a place that had learned to survive, to fight, to endure. As they landed on the surface, the first thing they noticed was the atmosphere. It was thick, heavy with oxygen and nitrogen, a far cry from the sterile environments of the alien worlds they had conquered. The air was alive with the hum of insects and the rustling of leaves, the sounds of a world that was never still. The planet's climate was unpredictable. Storms could rage across the land one moment, only to give way to clear skies the next. The weather was violent, the winds howling through the trees with a ferocity the aliens had not expected. The alien fleet had come expecting to find a peaceful, weak species, but instead they had landed on a world teeming with life that had adapted to survive the extremes of nature. And as they ventured deeper into the planet's jungles and deserts, they realized that this world was more than just alive. It was fighting to survive, to thrive, to dominate. One of the alien commanders standing at the front of the fleet surveyed the land. He was confused, unsure of what to make of what he was seeing. How can life on this planet survive these conditions? He muttered, his voice full of disbelief. It's as if every creature here was built to endure, to outlast the elements. How are they doing this? The lead scientist standing beside him was equally baffled. He tapped his fingers against the data console in front of him. The species here are resilient, he said. Every creature we've encountered so far has evolved to survive in extreme conditions. The predators are especially remarkable, able to withstand the harshest environments, adapting quickly to any changes in the climate or terrain. The commander narrowed his eyes as he looked out at the vast wilderness below. But how? He asked again. Why do they thrive here? And how is it that their bodies are built for such extremes? The scientist hesitated before answering. There's something unique about Earth's environment, he said slowly. It's as if the planet itself has shaped its creatures to be tougher, more resistant, perhaps even more dangerous than we anticipated. As the alien fleet explored further, they encountered more and more evidence of this planet's lethal beauty. The ground was alive with creatures that could tear through steel with their claws, and the skies were filled with birds that could strike from above faster than the eye could follow. Even the oceans, once thought to be an easy environment to conquer, were full of danger. The seas were teeming with massive predators, creatures that moved like shadows, their eyes glowing in the dark depths as they hunted in packs. But it wasn't just the predators that puzzled the aliens, it was the sheer determination of Earth's life forms. The plants, the animals, they fought for survival with a tenacity that was almost unnatural. They had adapted to the most brutal environments, learning to live and thrive where no other species would have lasted. The aliens knew this planet was different. They had underestimated it, thinking it was just another weak world, but now they saw the truth. Earth wasn't just a planet full of life. It was a planet full of life that had fought to survive against the odds. It had learned to adapt, to evolve, to conquer. And now the aliens were beginning to realize the true nature of this world. How is this possible? The commander asked, more to himself than anyone else. How could a planet like this produce such fighters? The scientist's eyes were wide with wonder as he stared out at the jungle, the creatures moving through the trees like ghosts. It's the planet itself, he said, his voice full of awe. Earth has been shaped by its environment, by its constant battle for survival. Every creature here has evolved to survive, to fight. They're not just surviving, they're thriving. They're predators in a world that has made them into something unstoppable. The aliens now understood. This wasn't just another planet to conquer. This was a planet of predators, each one more dangerous than the last. Earth's creatures had learned to survive in the harshest of conditions, and now they were ready to face whatever challenges the universe could throw at them. As the fleet continued to explore, the aliens began to fear what they had unleashed. They had come here expecting to dominate, to subdue a weak species. But instead they had encountered a world of predators, unpredictable, relentless, and capable of unimaginable survival. And as the fleet moved deeper into the heart of Earth's wilds, the aliens realized one thing. They were not the top of the food chain here. They were just another prey species waiting to see if they could survive the apex predator that was Earth. The aliens stood at the edge of the Earth, looking at its vast oceans and sprawling landscapes, but their minds were focused on something far deeper. They had come here expecting to find a fragile species, a race that could be easily dominated. What they discovered instead was a species forged in the flames of survival, a species that had endured against the odds for millennia. As they analyzed Earth's history, they were drawn to one truth: humans were anything but weak. Their records were filled with violence and conflict, but also with perseverance. Humans had waged countless wars, fought famines, and endured diseases that had wiped out entire civilizations. They had lived through firestorms of history that should have wiped them from existence, yet here they were, standing tall on their planet. The aliens could not deny it. Humans were survivors. The more they dug into Earth's past, the more they uncovered about humanity's ability to adapt and overcome. Their wars were brutal, but each time they faced an enemy, they adapted. Whether it was the fight for territory or the fight for their very survival, humanity had fought back again and again. When it seemed all hope was lost, these were not the actions of a weak species. The aliens saw it clearly now. Humanity had fought to carve out a place for themselves in a harsh world. They had been through unimaginable trials, yet they were still standing, still fighting, still pushing forward. They had suffered through disease outbreaks that had decimated populations, but instead of succumbing, they developed medicines and strategies to combat the plagues. They had faced famine, hunger, and poverty, yet somehow managed to rebuild and rise again. In their darkest moments, when their survival seemed impossible, they had found a way to push through. The more the aliens studied, the more they realized that humanity was not just fighting to survive. They were fighting to evolve, to become stronger. The aliens studied humanity's greatest wars, battles fought on the blood-soaked fields of Earth, where entire generations had been lost. But there was something strange about these wars. In every conflict, no matter how devastating, humanity always managed to regroup, to recover, and to come back stronger. Their military strategies had evolved, their technology advanced, and their resolve only hardened with each conflict. The aliens could see it. Humanity's true strength was their ability to adapt, to learn, and to fight, no matter the odds. As the alien leaders gathered in their command center, they couldn't help but be impressed. One of the commanders spoke first. These humans, they've fought wars that should have wiped them from existence, and yet here they are. He turned to his subordinates. They have fought back over and over, and they've learned from each defeat. This isn't a weak species. This is a species that fights to live, and that makes them dangerous. Another officer nodded. They don't just survive, they adapt. They evolve faster than we thought possible. They seem to be able to turn every challenge into an opportunity for growth. The lead scientist, still studying the data on the human race, was less convinced. It's one thing to fight wars, it's another thing to survive the harsh environments they've had to endure. Their planet, Earth, is filled with dangers. From earthquakes to extreme weather conditions, volcanic eruptions, and diseases, humanity has been constantly under siege. And yet, they survive. He paused, considering. Their greatest strength lies not just in their intelligence, but in their sheer will to survive. I've never seen anything like it. The commander, who had been observing the scientists with a skeptical eye, finally spoke. You're saying that this entire species is built on one principle, survival, that no matter what happens, they will find a way to keep going? The scientist nodded gravely. Exactly. Every trial they face seems to push them forward, not backward. The more they suffer, the more they learn to endure. It's as if their very nature is to survive. The alien leaders exchanged uneasy glances. They had come here expecting to conquer a weak species, a species they could easily manipulate. But what they were discovering now was far more unsettling. Humanity wasn't weak. It was an unstoppable force. The more they learned about Earth's history, the more they saw that every setback humanity had faced had only made them stronger. Whether it was war, famine, or disease, they had always found a way to push through. And now the aliens were beginning to wonder if they had underestimated humanity's true potential. One of the officers, who had been quiet up until now, finally spoke. What if this survival instinct, this will to adapt, is part of their DNA? What if it's not just the environment that makes them tough? What if they've evolved to be this way? The lead scientist paused, tapping a few commands into his console. You may be onto something. Their genetic makeup is different from anything we've encountered. They don't just evolve physically, they adapt mentally. Every hardship they face seems to push them toward growth. They don't shy away from danger, they face it head on. The commander nodded, a deep worry settling in his chest. If that's true, then we've miscalculated. This planet is not a world we can easily conquer. These humans are capable of more than we've ever seen. Another alien, who had been studying Earth's history more closely, pointed to a series of events that stood out. Look at this. Every time they were brought to the brink of extinction, they found a way to push back. It's as if they're built for conflict. They've been at war with each other for centuries, and yet they still exist. They've fought with their own kind, fought to survive against other species, and yet they never give up. The commander's expression hardened. This is not a species we can afford to underestimate. They have fought against their own kind, and yet they have learned to unite when needed. They are a race that thrives on conflict, but more importantly, they thrive on survival. As they continued to study humanity's history, the aliens couldn't help but feel a growing sense of dread. The humans they had thought of as fragile were far from it. They had survived through everything, through wars, through plague, through famine, through extinction-level events, and each time they came out stronger. It was becoming clear humanity was not just a species to be conquered. It was a species to be reckoned with. The more the aliens studied Earth's past, the more they realized that they had made a grave mistake in underestimating humanity. This planet, which they had thought of as insignificant, was home to a species that had faced the worst the universe could throw at it and survived. And now the aliens would have to face the consequences of their arrogance. The aliens had been monitoring Earth for weeks now, their scans picking up strange signals and anomalies in the human genome. It was something they hadn't expected. They had come to this planet with one clear assumption. Humans were weak, fragile creatures that could easily be controlled. But what they were discovering now was something far more troubling. At first, they thought it was a mistake, a glitch in their scans. But after further investigation, they realized it was no error at all. There was something within human DNA, something hidden deep within their genetic code that made them unlike any species the aliens had encountered before. It wasn't just the fact that humans could survive harsh conditions. Every species on Earth had evolved to adapt in some way. No, this was something far deeper. Humanity had a secret power embedded within them, a power that allowed them to adapt at an astonishing rate, to heal injuries in ways that defied logic, and to push beyond what should have been their limits. The lead scientist aboard the alien ship analyzed the data repeatedly. His mind raced as he tried to understand what they were seeing. Human DNA contained an anomaly, something that wasn't like anything they had encountered in the galaxy before. There were rapid regeneration patterns, instances of humans surviving injuries that would have killed any other species. It wasn't just a survival trait. It was something more. It was as if their entire species was built to endure, to heal, and to grow stronger from every hardship they faced. This doesn't make sense, the scientist muttered to himself, running another series of scans. Their DNA structure, it's constantly evolving. This isn't just a reaction to their environment, it's something built into them. They're designed to survive, no matter the cost. The alien commander listened in silence, his face a mask of concern. What do you mean, designed? The scientist hesitated. I don't know. But this ability to heal, to regenerate, it goes beyond anything we've seen. The more they're pushed, the more they adapt. It's like their bodies are constantly improving, growing stronger. They've been through wars, plagues, and countless other catastrophes, and yet every time they bounce back. The commander's brow furrowed. So you're saying that their resilience isn't just a reaction to their environment? It's a built-in trait? The scientist nodded slowly. Exactly. Their biology is designed for survival. They've evolved, yes, but it's almost as if they were meant to endure hardship. And each time they're pushed to the edge, they grow stronger. The commander's mind raced as he processed this information. He had assumed that once they arrived on Earth, the humans would be easy to control. After all, they were small, fragile creatures, easy to intimidate and subjugate. But what they were discovering now was something far more dangerous. The humans weren't just surviving, they were evolving and fast. And worse yet, they seemed to be able to adapt to any environment, any challenge, and any enemy. How long do you think it would take them to reach their full potential? The commander asked, his voice low and filled with concern. The scientist paused, looking at the data with a grim expression. Given what I'm seeing here, I'd say they're already much closer than we realize. In a few generations, they could evolve into something far beyond what we understand. The commander felt a cold shiver run down his spine. He had underestimated the humans. But now, that was a mistake he could no longer afford to make. If their resilience was truly as strong as it seemed, then they could pose a serious threat to his empire. The aliens had been so focused on their advanced technology, their superior firepower, that they had failed to realize the most important factor, the humans' will to survive. That will was stronger than anything the aliens had ever encountered. And now it was becoming clear that humanity's true power wasn't just in their ability to adapt, it was in their refusal to give up no matter the odds. The alien fleet had arrived expecting an easy conquest. They had come with the arrogance of a species that had never known defeat. But as they watched humanity's survival instincts unfold, they began to realize that this planet wasn't one they could simply take over. The humans were not the weaklings they had assumed. They were something much more dangerous, survivors, fighters, and worst of all, a species that would never stop adapting to whatever the galaxy threw at them. The aliens had captured a few humans for experimentation, intending to study them up close. But each test they performed only seemed to strengthen the humans. When subjected to extreme temperatures, radiation, or even poison, the humans showed no signs of dying. Instead, their bodies healed almost immediately, their wounds closing up as if they had never been there in the first place. The aliens had used their most advanced weapons on the humans, but each time they came back stronger. One of the most shocking observations was how the humans seemed to thrive under extreme stress. When pushed to the edge, when they were most vulnerable, that's when they became their most dangerous. It was as if their bodies were designed to face extreme adversity and come out on top. The aliens began to fear what would happen if they pushed humanity too far. How much further can they go? The commander asked. We don't know, the scientist replied. They haven't even come close to their limits. If anything, every test we conduct, every experiment we run only pushes them further. We're starting to realize that this might not just be a species with a strong will to survive. This might be a species built for war. The commander turned to look at the planet below them. Earth, once a simple, insignificant world, now seemed like the most dangerous place in the galaxy. It wasn't the aliens' superior technology or their advanced weaponry that would win them the war. It was humanity's ability to survive, to adapt, and to fight back. And that was something the aliens couldn't defeat. The thought of what humans might become in the future sent a chill through the commander's mind. What if the humans were capable of something far greater than anyone could imagine? What if their survival instincts were the key to something much darker, something that could threaten the very existence of every species in the galaxy? There was one thing the aliens knew for sure. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with, and they had only just begun to uncover the full extent of what Earth's inhabitants were capable of. The alien fleet hovered above Earth, their ships massive and intimidating, casting long shadows over the planet below. They had come expecting an easy conquest, ready to crush what they thought was a weak, fragile species. The humans were no more than ants in their eyes, small, powerless, and easily defeated. They had underestimated the planet's inhabitants, thinking they could wipe them out with a single strike. But now, as they looked down on the cities and landscapes of Earth, something strange was happening. The humans were fighting back. It had all started with a small group of rebels, armed with only basic weapons, guns, knives, and homemade explosives. The aliens had laughed at them, assuming the resistance would be crushed within minutes. But what they saw instead was a determined group of humans, each willing to fight to the death. They fought with a fierceness and rage that the aliens had not anticipated. It wasn't just the weapons they carried, it was the way they fought, the way they refused to back down, no matter the odds. One alien officer stood at the bridge of his ship, watching the chaos unfold below. The humans were everywhere, attacking with reckless abandon. They stormed alien positions, throwing themselves at superior technology with a wild, desperate energy. The officer clenched his fists. How could these fragile creatures be so fierce? "They're using primitive weapons," the officer said, disbelief in his voice. "How can they do this?" His assistant looked at the screen, where the images of humans charging and fighting with everything they had flashed across the screen. "It seems their will to survive is much stronger than we expected." The officer's mind raced. They had expected to find an easy prey, but these humans were something else. They were relentless, charging into the unknown, attacking with no fear. The alien ships hovered above, sending down beams of energy to strike at the humans, but every time they hit, the humans regrouped and charged again. They would not stop. It was as if they thrived in the face of danger, almost as if they were born to fight. In one of the cities, a group of humans launched an assault on an alien command post. Armed with nothing more than rifles and explosives, they managed to breach the heavily fortified structure. The aliens, who had prepared for everything, had never expected the humans to be capable of this kind of resistance. As the rebels tore through the building, they encountered alien soldiers, large, heavily armored, and equipped with advanced weaponry. But the humans didn't hesitate. They attacked with a savagery the aliens had never witnessed. One soldier, a man with fire in his eyes, threw himself at an alien soldier twice his size. The alien's weapon fired, but the human dove and tackled the alien to the ground. There was no hesitation in his movements, no fear in his heart. The alien tried to shake him off, but the human was relentless. His survival instinct kicked in, and he fought like a wild animal. With a primal roar, he wrestled the alien's weapon away and fired. The blast struck the alien in the chest, sending it crashing to the ground. The officer aboard the alien ship watched this unfold on the screen, stunned. This wasn't a battle between an advanced empire and a weak species. This was something else. The humans didn't fight like soldiers, they fought like predators. "How are they doing this?" the officer muttered. "They should be dead by now." The assistant's voice was filled with awe. "Their survival instincts, they're far beyond anything we've encountered. It's like they don't fear death. They embrace it." The officer clenched his jaw. He had been trained to face warriors from across the galaxy, but nothing prepared him for this. These humans were different. They were far more resilient than any species they had ever encountered. And what was even more unsettling was the realization that every time the humans were pushed to their limits, they came back stronger, more determined. Elsewhere, a group of human soldiers fought to take down an alien ship. It wasn't a large force, just a handful of men and women armed with little more than explosives and basic rifles. But they had one thing the aliens didn't: determination. As they approached the alien vessel, they planted charges on its hull, blasting open the door and rushing inside. The interior was filled with alien soldiers prepared for a fight. The humans charged forward, firing their rifles, using everything in their arsenal to hold back the alien invaders. It was brutal. The aliens were armed with advanced energy weapons, while the humans had nothing but their grit and ferocity. But the humans pressed on, fighting tooth and nail, pushing their bodies to the limit. It was as if they had no fear, no hesitation. They fought as if their survival depended on it, and perhaps, in some ways, it did. Inside the ship, a human soldier faced off with an alien commander. The alien towered over the soldier, his armor thick and impenetrable. The soldier was smaller, his uniform torn and bloodied, but his eyes burned with a fierce resolve. He knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about fighting back, it was about survival. The human lunged forward, slamming into the alien with all his strength. The two collided, their weapons clashing in a whirlwind of violence. The alien's energy sword slashed through the air, but the human was quick, dodging and countering with his own blade. It was a brutal dance, each fighter trying to overpower the other. With a final surge of strength, the human disarmed the alien, knocking him to the ground. Panting and bloodied, the human stood over his fallen foe, his weapon raised. The alien's eyes widened in disbelief. The human had done the impossible. He had defeated an alien warrior twice his size. With a swift motion, the soldier struck, ending the battle. As the human stood victorious, the officer on the alien ship watched with shock. The humans were not just surviving, they were winning. Their survival instincts, their refusal to back down, had turned the tide of battle. The aliens had come expecting to crush a fragile species, but what they found was something far more terrifying, a species that would never stop fighting, no matter the odds. "How is this possible?" the officer muttered. "Because," the assistant said quietly, "they fight like predators." The officer turned back to the screens, watching as the humans continued their assault. Each strike, each blow seemed to carry with it an almost animalistic power. The aliens had underestimated them, and now they were paying the price. The humans were no longer the weak species they had once believed them to be. They had become something far more dangerous, unstoppable predators fighting not just for survival but for victory. The alien fleet had come to Earth, confident in their superiority. They had witnessed the humans' initial resistance, and though it had been fiercer than expected, they believed it was just a temporary burst of defiance. The humans were supposed to be weak, fragile creatures, nothing more than a nuisance to be crushed. But the aliens hadn't counted on one thing: humanity's ability to adapt, to evolve in the face of overwhelming danger. The humans had been pushed to their limits. Cities were destroyed, families torn apart, and countless lives lost. But the more the aliens attacked, what the aliens hadn't realized was that every battle, every injury, every sacrifice was making the humans stronger. They were not a fragile species. They were a species that could grow, adapt, and evolve in ways the aliens could never have predicted. Deep beneath the surface of Earth, in secret laboratories and hidden military bunkers, the humans were studying their enemies and themselves. What had started as an instinct to survive was now becoming something more. The human body, already tough and resilient, was evolving in response to the pressure it was under. DNA was changing, unlocking hidden potential that had never been seen before. In one of the human bunkers, a scientist stood over a lab table studying a vial of blood. The blood was from a soldier who had survived countless battles, his body scarred and battered. But something was different. The scientist's eyes widened as the blood began to react. It was regenerating faster than before. It was healing at a cellular level, repairing itself almost instantly. She had seen this phenomenon before, but this time it was stronger, faster, more efficient. The human body was evolving in real time, responding to the stress and trauma it had been subjected to. Across the world, similar transformations were happening. Soldiers, once ordinary humans, were becoming something else. They were stronger, faster, more resilient. Their senses were heightened, their bodies were healing faster than ever before, and their minds were sharpening with each passing moment. It was as if humanity was awakening a primal force within themselves, a power that had been lying dormant for eons. In the heart of the alien fleet, a commander watched as the humans continued to fight. They had begun to show signs of something new, something dangerous. The aliens had been sending wave after wave of soldiers, thinking they would eventually crush the resistance. But the humans didn't back down. Instead, they adapted. The aliens had seen a few instances of humans surviving injuries that would have killed other species, but now it was happening on a massive scale. The humans were no longer just surviving. They were evolving, changing, growing stronger. The commander's thoughts were interrupted by a sudden report from his scouts. The humans had launched an attack, not with the primitive weapons they had been using, but with something new, something more advanced. The humans had begun to use alien technology, reverse engineering their weapons, learning how to fight back with weapons that were far more efficient than anything the aliens had prepared for. The commander's face darkened. This wasn't just a fight for survival anymore. The humans were evolving faster than they could anticipate, and soon they would be a real threat. It was no longer a question of how many humans they could kill. It was a question of how to stop a species that had just unlocked its true potential. The aliens watched as the humans launched a surprise attack on one of their largest ships. It was a coordinated assault, with humans infiltrating the vessel from multiple points. They moved with speed and precision, almost as if they had been trained to fight in such a manner. The aliens were caught off guard, their forces scattering as the humans overwhelmed them with a strength and aggression they had never experienced. In the middle of the chaos, a human soldier faced off with an alien officer. The officer was towering, clad in heavy armor, his weapon crackling with energy. But the human was different now. His body was covered in scars, yet he moved with a fluid grace that seemed almost unnatural. He charged forward, his muscles rippling with power, his eyes burning with a fierce determination. The alien officer swung his weapon, aiming for the human's head, but the soldier dodged with lightning speed, his reflexes faster than ever before. He slammed into the officer, knocking him back with a force that seemed to shake the very ground beneath them. The officer staggered, trying to regain his footing, but the human was already on him, striking with brutal efficiency. The alien's weapon discharged, but the human dodged again, closing the distance between them. With a swift motion, the human grabbed the officer's weapon, wrenching it from his hands. The officer's eyes widened in disbelief. He had underestimated this human, just as the others had underestimated Earth's species. The soldier didn't hesitate. With a final, powerful strike, he incapacitated the officer, leaving him unconscious on the ground. As the human stood over his fallen enemy, he could feel the rush of power coursing through his veins. This wasn't just about fighting anymore. This was something else. This was evolution in action. The commander of the alien fleet watched the scene unfold on his screens, his heart sinking. The humans had awakened something within themselves, a power that could not be ignored. They had become a true predator, and the aliens were not prepared for what came next. "They've evolved," the commander muttered. "We have to stop them now, before it's too late." But it was already too late. The Deathworlders had awoken, and now nothing could stand in their way. The aliens had created a monster, an apex predator capable of destroying entire fleets, and humanity, the species they had once underestimated, had just begun to show them what they were truly capable of. The battle had only just begun. The alien fleet had finally begun to retreat, their ships turning away from Earth. For the first time, the invaders felt fear. The planet they had once seen as insignificant had proven to be far more dangerous than they could have imagined. The Deathworlders, humans, had awoken to their true potential, and now the aliens were running. In the heart of the alien flagship, the commander stood before the council, his face grim. His mind raced with the impossible situation they now faced. How had it come to this? The species that had been nothing more than an afterthought was now the most dangerous in the galaxy. The commander's voice echoed through the room, his words heavy with defeat. "We thought they were weak," he said, "but they are unstoppable. The Earth species, they have become the apex predator." The council members, who had once looked down on Earth with amusement, now listened in stunned silence. They had underestimated the humans, believing their primitive technology and scattered societies would never pose a threat. But the humans had proven them wrong. The Earthlings had endured and fought, and now they were not just surviving, they were thriving, evolving, and conquering. The commander continued, his words laced with disbelief. "We saw them as prey, as a simple target for our conquest. But they have adapted faster than we could have imagined. Their bodies heal faster, their minds are sharper, and their instincts are beyond anything we've encountered." The council remained silent, the weight of the commander's words sinking in. They had always believed that the galaxy was theirs for the taking, that they could sweep across it with ease. But now they were on the run. And the one species they had never taken seriously was the one species that had brought them to their knees. Back on Earth, the humans were not celebrating. There was no time for that. They had learned too much from their battles. Their victory was not an end. It was just the beginning. Humans had tasted what it was like to push their limits, to evolve, and now they knew they could never stop. Their survival instinct, their drive to adapt and overcome, was a force they could not deny. They had become something more, and they were not going to stop. In the ruins of a once great city, human soldiers stood watch, scanning the skies for any signs of alien retaliation. They knew the aliens would not give up easily. If anything, the retreat was just a brief pause in a much larger war. But the humans were ready. They had faced the unimaginable and they had survived. Now they had become the ones feared across the galaxy. At the same time, in the alien command center, the fleet's retreating ships began to regroup. The commander stood at the front of the bridge, looking out over the vastness of space, his hands clenched into fists, the weight of their failure pressing down on him. For the first time, the aliens realized that they were no longer the dominant force in the galaxy. Humanity had risen to the top, and it was only a matter of time before the humans came for them. "We can't run forever," the commander said to his officers. "We've underestimated them. They've proven that they can evolve in ways we never thought possible. We have to prepare for what comes next." His words were met with a mixture of fear and agreement. The alien fleet had suffered heavy losses, but they had learned one crucial thing. The humans were not like any species they had encountered before. They were relentless, evolving in real time, and now they were more than just survivors. They were predators, with a hunger for victory that would never be sated. The galaxy had watched Earth's rise, and now the Council was terrified of what that meant. If humanity could evolve this quickly, if they could adapt and grow stronger with every battle, what would happen when they fully unleashed their power? Could the galaxy survive a species that would never surrender, that would fight until the very end? The council members looked at each other, fear creeping into their minds. The humans were not just a threat to their empire, they were a threat to the entire galaxy. And if the humans ever decided to come after them with the full force of their newfound power, there was nothing they could do to stop them. In the distance, the last of the alien ships fled, disappearing into the void. The commander watched as they retreated, but deep down he knew that they couldn't run forever. The Deathworlders were coming, and this time they wouldn't be so easily dismissed. As the alien fleet disappeared from view, Earth's leaders gathered in secret. They had won a battle, but the war was far from over. The humans had proven their resilience, but they knew that there were still enemies out there lurking in the darkness. The galaxy had seen their rise, but now the question was, what would the humans do next? The answer was clear. They would never stop fighting, they would never stop evolving, and they would never stop hunting. The Earth was no longer a weak, fragile planet. It had become the new apex predator of the galaxy, and nothing could stand in their way. The universe would soon learn that when you challenge humanity, you are not just fighting a species, you are facing the very force of evolution itself. The galaxy would soon know that Earth was a force that could not be defeated, a species that would fight for survival no matter the cost. The reckoning had begun, and this time it was the humans who would hold the power.